All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you happen to be joining in from. Welcome to Adobe. Sorry, not used to doing Adobe Developers Live, which we had last month. Welcome to App Builder Live. That's what we're doing today. We have a fantastic show. So I'm delighted that you've joined us today. I just wanted to, a couple things I wanted to mention before we get started. I don't know if you're familiar with Adobe Firefly, our generative AI technology. It's amazing, literally amazing. So if you haven't checked that out, by all means do. I just wanted to show, this is an example of taking a piece of content and then remixing it, essentially putting in an image. I had an image with all these colors in it, and then telling it to make it kind of ribbons. It's pretty fantastic. The variations that I did, you could see in that kind of loading screen that I had at the beginning. Yeah, so let me share a little bit. Here is the Firefly. Oh, let's go back to this screen. There we go. So Firefly homepage, definitely check it out, firefly.adobe.com. As I mentioned as well, Adobe Developers Live, if you want to catch the replays, we had 2 sessions, one for North America and Europe and one for APAC. The APAC recordings are going up today or tomorrow, and actually by the end of the week for sure. And then all of that content can be had on Experience League. And then if you want to catch some of our previous shows, you can check out developer. Here we go. We'll put it up on screen here. Here's the URL to get to all of our previous shows, and they're all organized by kind of focus areas: AEM, commerce, AEP, and then product features and functionality. If you have ideas about topics that you think we should cover, by all means, let me know, and we will check that out. So today we have a couple of fantastic speakers for you, and let me actually bring them up now. So here we go. All right. Thank you guys for joining us. So we're going to talk today about the app marketplace launch that I think happened recently.
Yep.
Yesterday. Hot off the oven for sure. Yeah.
This is completely fresh for everybody who's watching.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
So yeah, this has been a long asked feature since we've launched App Builder. People are like, hey, I want to make this available for other organizations. I want to potentially put a reusable application to be for sale. And this is basically us saying, you got what you want. We have integrated App Builder into Exchange and Commerce Marketplace, so you can actually package up your application. The TLDR is basically you can package up your application now, sell, distribute it, and for your customers to purchase and install it themselves.
That is fantastic. All right.
Super exciting. Super exciting. The apps in front of all of our customers, being able to having it become more easily discoverable for our customers. So on the commerce side, we're super excited about this.
Yeah, very, very cool. Yeah, discoverability and having more variety, and definitely people who have invested in App Builder and being able to widen the adoption of the solutions and the integrations that they've built, I think is a fantastic opportunity. Okay, Sarah, I'll put up the slides, and you want to jump right into it?
Sounds great. So building apps for Adobe's marketplace. For those of you who might need a refresher, I know you are at the App Builder, live stream, but just in case you've accidentally forgotten what App Builder is, we're essentially an extensibility framework that really empowers our developers with an end-to-end framework so that you can better and more easily extend and integrate with various Adobe solutions. And Obviously, we have a whole end-to-end developer experience that starts from developer console. You're able to, build, deploy using our command line interface, the CLI, and then deploy your application into either Experience Cloud or now actually AEM and Commerce UI as well. If you're building an application with UI, you can build UI extensions that can be put into these products. And of course, this model really allows you as a developer to only worry about one extensibility model. I know traditionally there have been different stacks that you have to consider. Worry no more. Now this is our one extensibility model across the different solutions, and you can use the SDKs, events, CLI to really help accelerate your development process. Accelerate being the keyword here, time to value, right? We wanted to make sure that you're able to build things as fast as possible without having to worry about, hosting, without having to be concerned about how to configure your application. All you need to worry about is the code itself and making sure that it works. And last but not least, a lot of the stuff that we do is open source. You can find us at github.com/Adobe for a lot of the tools, SDKs, templates that you can actually leverage. Contribute to us, right? I think we jointly can make things a lot more accessible to all and available by having for both first-party and third-party technology to make sure it's the easiest workflow for our developers. So under this context, let's talk a little bit about partners. So historically, if you are, if you're a DX partner who's been building applications for a while, you probably encounter this experience in the past, where you as a partner, you build an application, sometimes you host it yourself, sometimes it's a package, particularly in the case for AEM and Commerce. You will then work with, you can list it on your own site, or sometimes you work with Exchange and you actually make it available as a listing on Adobe Exchange. However, because we don't actually enable purchasing today, so after a customer has discovered that application, they actually have to reach back out to you, the partner, to figure out how to purchase it and to install it. And oftentimes, especially in the cases where you have a whole package, we know that a lot of our partners spend a lot of time trying to help the customer install this code, making sure that it fits into however their implementation works, making sure they're putting in the right configurations. And this whole cycle repeats again whenever there's code updates, there's any sort of changes to the code that needs to be applied. So it's extremely manual. We know you've experienced a lot of pain with this. And that's these are all the reasons why, we want to make things better. To just super quickly summarize, I think that in our current landscape, it's painful for both our partners and our customers. For our partners, they spend a lot of time trying to not only build the application, but communication cost, a lot of special knowledge and maintenance effort is needed to help a customer actually be able to use whatever they have built. And for a customer, they're able to see some of the applications that's available to them, but they can't really self-service, right? They really have to ask for help from the partner. They have to figure out how to install this. This becomes an annual thing whenever they do system upgrades that has to be maintained and really delays the customer's time in getting the ultimate workflow that they want to have. So it's really in this that we introduced what we're building today, which is App Builder for Adobe's marketplaces. Essentially, starting today, technology partners can now build App Builder applications that extends Adobe Experience Cloud. You will be able to distribute it, so make a listing on our developer distribution portal. This will, once it goes through the submission process, a customer will then be able to see this on Adobe Exchange and actually purchase this application and configure it to self-service. And this application, we also allow the option, if you're a commerce partner who's building a commerce application, you can actually choose to dual list your application in this process that says, okay, I not only want to list on Exchange, I also like to make this available on Commerce. It will be really seamless for you to be able to do that. I'm going to go into a whole demo, I think, later in the show. So definitely, we'll walk you through all the details on what the submission process looks like, what the purchasing experience looks like end to end. So definitely, we'll talk more about this. And if you do have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. We'll see if we can, get to them during the show. So with this launch, as I said, with technology partners now being able to build applications and customers able to purchase, configure, and install the application themselves, we really want to, empower our partners in this early adoption period. So if you are an early adopter who's looking to submit applications, we're actually going to waive the commissions. So historically, there's a commission split between Adobe and the developers. We're going to waive that commission for 2 years. So definitely get started soon to make sure this is available to you. In addition, if you're an existing partner, our eligible partner can actually leverage this program called the App Assurance Program. Essentially, App Assurance Program, think of it as like VIP treatment for your application listings. They'll be able to, make sure that your application looks good, make sure it's highlighted, make sure you get maximum visibility for your program, for your application listing. So definitely talk to your partner manager about the App Assurance Program. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we have this available for you. Do start building and submitting your application to us today. So what are some of the key differences, I think, between, like, we've seen all the problems, right? And then now in building the app, in building this whole experience, we want to make sure that we're covering all of those. We're covering and able to improve the experience on both for partners and for customers. On one hand, we've noticed a lot of the issue really comes from different solutions, right? We have a wide range of different approaches, like different ways to go about this that we've informed the partners before. We want to change all that and make sure we have one way that is bright and clear for our partners. And with using this, building an app builder application, you'll be able to easily extend Experience Cloud products and be able to list this in a centralized, and streamlined experience through our developer distribution portal to make it available both onto Adobe Exchange and Commerce Marketplace. And you as a partner is going to be able to easily manage those also through developer distribution. So one portal for you for all of these. In addition, in the past, because the listings are really just listings, particularly for Exchange, we don't actually do much testing on the application, but we are introducing an automated testing framework. We share this technology with the Commerce Marketplace to be able to, it's called the Extension Quality Platform, to be able to essentially do a number of automated tests like virus scans, dependency checks to make sure the code quality is great for the application that's submitted.
And I just, before you go on, Sarah, I just wanted to add that was we are going to have in January another App Builder Live session just around that automated testing framework. So we'll dive deep into that. So look for that in the new year. Go ahead, Sarah. Sorry. I just wanted to plug.
Great plug, Ron. So yeah, so definitely join us during our January session to learn more about how this whole automated testing framework works. On the other hand, it's all about self-service, right? There's so much manual process that involves today where communication between Adobe, the partner, customer, we all have to talk so much to make a customer successful. Now, the more self-service we can provide, the easier it gets. Of course, we'll still be here, we're not going away, but we really want to empower both the partner and the customer to be able to do the things that you need to do. For our partner, we've built developer tooling for packaging, for making things available. And as I mentioned, and we'll go through this in the demo, we have this thing called the developer distribution portal where you will really be able to manage all aspects of your listing and do, handle payment, handle distribution all in that one spot. And similarly for a customer, they will be able to really in a self-service manner manage all of their applications through Adobe Exchange. They can buy it, they can install it, they can configure it, they can revoke it if you would like, or if you no longer like the application, all in one place for our customer. So you guys are able to focus on the work that you need to do instead of having to spend a lot of communication to make sure the application works. And with that, I'm yabbing away about what we're releasing. It's also important, we want to help the partners understand what kind of stuff you can actually build. So that's actually why we have Surya. I realized we haven't. I assume that you know Surya. He's the product marketing manager.
Yeah, Surya, who are you and what are you doing here, man?
I've had the honor of being on Ron's show a couple of times this year, so yeah.
So we have Surya and Ron here to talk a little bit more about some use cases that we've already seen with commerce and AEM customers to just get your brain flowing, right? Like what kind of stuff you can actually build. Yep. With that, over to Surya.
Thanks, Sarah. If you wouldn't mind advancing one for me. So as I mentioned, Ron has had me, he's been kind enough to have me on his show a couple of times this year, and I've tried to be as noisy as I can about why our partners and our customers and our developers should be building apps for Adobe Commerce. But I feel like it's never enough. So I'll talk about it a little bit more right now. So if you are an Adobe Commerce developer, or even if you aren't, I wanted to give a bit of a recap about what we are doing with Adobe Commerce and how apps help with that. And I'm going to talk about why you should build apps, why you should put them on our marketplace shortly after. But essentially, with Adobe Commerce, it's always been one of the most, if not the most flexible commerce platforms in the industry. But with great flexibility comes great responsibility too. And what happens often is that when you start customizing Adobe Commerce too much, it can add challenges to maintenance of those customizations and the upgrades for them. And what we did, I think on Jan 17th of this year, we introduced a new way to extend Adobe Commerce, and that is by not customizing the product itself, but by adding these well-defined extension points that can be extended outside the product. So we provided complete coverage of GraphQL and REST API. That's been something that we've been doing for some time, and we had it more or less complete last year. But by Jan of this year, the 100% coverage of all API for headless use cases, which is the first extension point. But then we added a few more. So we added UI extensibility, and that means you can build single-page apps outside of Adobe Commerce and then inject them back into the Commerce admin UI. And that can enhance your merchant experience. So you can add new menu items, new pages, modify existing pages, and so on. We added events to give you a way to share data events between applications, between commerce and third-party applications, much more easily in a low-code, serverless way. And then we added webhooks that are similar to events. In fact, they use the same events, but they execute synchronously. And what that means is that sometimes it's not just a handoff. You're not just saying something happened in commerce and I need another application to know about it. So you have real-time use cases where a customer enters a shipping address and we immediately need to check whether we can deliver to that area. And if so, what's the shipping cost to that area? What's the tax for that state or something like that? And bring it back synchronously into the customer's shopping cart. So for those synchronous real-time use cases, we have webhooks. And then for asynchronous use cases, we have events. So
hey,
all of this, yes.
Let me jump in for just a second, Surya. I just wanted to add, I was on LinkedIn yesterday, and I can't remember somebody from the engineering team posted a great blog article by one of the partners on out-of-process extensibility and Adobe Commerce. And essentially, it gave the pros and cons of when to use in-process, when to use out-of-process. With App Builder, and if I find the link, I will throw that in there. But it was an excellent, I think, primer into kind of when you would use that kind of out-of-process extensibility. So, anyways, go ahead.
Absolutely, I think that was Rick from one of our partners, Blue Acorn, and he's done a great job, describing that. So the last point on this I'll make is that all of these extension points are available, and they are natively available within Adobe Developer App Builder. And that means that you don't have to wire together Commerce's extension points with some other serverless extensibility platform. All our events, our API, the integration between UI extensibility, etc., are wired directly to App Builder. So you can just go and start building those outside of Commerce, making it easy for you to maintain your Commerce application. Upgrades become simpler, and the apps themselves don't need to be tested and refactored each time there's a new version of Adobe Commerce. So that's the reason why you should build apps for Commerce. Now, moving on, let's talk about what kind of apps, and you could build apps for dozens and dozens of use cases, but I'll give you a couple of examples here. So Sarah, if you wouldn't mind just advancing that one. Yeah. So here's an example of an event-driven app. And what this does is, so probably one of the most common integrations that Commerce customers use is integrating Adobe Commerce with ERPs for, in this particular example, for an order to be fulfilled by the ERP, for instance. So a shopper would be browsing the merchant's website, and when they place an order, that order goes into Adobe Commerce. Adobe Commerce will then expose that event, and we have over 700 events available for you to consume, and you choose which ones you want to make available to App Builder. And in that, you can expose the order created event, and there are other events, like I mentioned, for example, customer profile updated or product catalog updated and so on. But in this case, we take the order created event, push it to IO events, and from there, you can either directly send it to your ERP if it exposes a webhook that we can post it to, or you can create a runtime action, which is really a serverless function written in JavaScript, which can just go and maybe transform the data in some way, and then, if required, enrich that data and then send it out to the ERP for that order to be fulfilled. If you wanted to, you could also have real-time integrations with ERP, and the most common examples of those are maybe a last-minute inventory check or pricing check. So as the customer is checking out, instead of that event going asynchronously, we can use a webhook on Adobe Commerce to go to the ERP, get the real-time pricing or the inventory, that is the availability of the product, and then help the customer through their checkout process as well. And as I mentioned, all of this is done without customizing anything on Adobe Commerce. The next example I'd like to talk about is UI extensibility. So, Sarah. Yeah. So UI extensibility is probably the second most customized area for Adobe Commerce, and that is the merchant UI, which is what I'm talking about here. In this particular example, you might want to associate assets sitting in a third-party asset management system. That could be Adobe's digital asset, AEM's asset solution, or any third-party asset solution. You might want to take assets sitting there and associate them with products sitting in Adobe Commerce. And rather than have your merchants go to two different systems to do that, maybe you could build a single page app sitting in App Builder. And that app could actually query your asset management system and bring back those assets. Now we can inject that app into the admin UI, right into the product editor page. So when a merchant is updating a product or anything like that, they could browse assets sitting in a third-party system and associate it with that particular product that they are working on at the time. Now, a couple of things that make this much more simpler for you. First is Commerce has this UI SDK so that it can inject that app directly into the Commerce admin. So you don't have to do anything on the Adobe Commerce side each time you're injecting an app. We also provide you with a set of UI components that match Adobe's design language, which means that any apps that you build will look exactly like the Adobe Commerce UI or any other Adobe Experience Cloud solution. So for your merchants, it's kind of seamless. It looks like it's part of the product. They cannot tell that it's a third-party app injected in there. And most importantly, those apps leverage Adobe's IMS authentication, which means that if you're logged into Adobe Commerce, those apps are securely injected into the Commerce admin, and your authentication is applicable to those apps as well. So it makes it simple for you to leave all of that wiring to us, and you just build those single-page apps that will then get injected into the UI. So these are some examples of things you can build. Of course, the list is pretty extensive, and I think I did a session back in October with Ron where I went through a much more extensive list of use cases. Maybe we can drop a link to that later on in here in case you want to go and catch up on that. But I do want to point out, if you're an Adobe Commerce existing partner or developer and you have put apps on our Commerce Marketplace, I want to show you or let you know that the Commerce Marketplace is not going anywhere. It continues to be the marketplace for commerce apps. And it will, and as in addition to commerce apps, it also has our more traditional PHP extensions, which will only reside on the Commerce Marketplace. It also remains open to all of our open source developers and users who can continue to list on the on the Commerce Marketplace. It will work hand in hand with Adobe Exchange Marketplace. And apps listed, it gives you a wider audience that your apps can go in front of. So not just our commerce, customers, but you may be building apps that work across Adobe products, and they will be available to our larger Adobe set of customers as they're listed through Exchange. And it doesn't add any more work to you because they go through the same testing process and all of that, and they get and you can choose to list them in both places. Ron, with that, I'll hand it back to you to talk to us a little bit about what AEM is doing with apps.
Yeah, I don't think I have any slides, right, Sarah? So I'm just going to talk to it. UI extensibility is essentially what you can build now with AEM applications, right? So a little bit different, pretty different than the UI extensibility that model that Surya was talking about, commerce. There are two surfaces inside of AEM sites that you, as a partner or a customer, can extend essentially with buttons, modal dialogues, whatever custom functionality that you want to pull into the authoring experience for AEM customers. And this works with AEM as a cloud service customer. So if you have any of your customers that are running AEM as a cloud service and you are looking for a way to provide your application to them that's more tightly integrated with AEM sites, then UI extensibility is the way to go about doing that. And that, again, is an out-of-process extensibility model where you're building outside of, I guess, the AEM development environment. So the two surfaces that you can create UI extensibility options are the content fragments. So if you've got any headless customers, they are 100% going to be using the content fragment admin tool as well as the content fragment editor tool. So you have the option to be front and center in both of those surfaces, as well as the new universal editor, Adobe's WYSIWYG editor for pretty much any content, be it headless, page, etc. So if you are looking to target those two surfaces, then by all means, let us know. We would be happy to work with you on helping bring your solution to life in front and bring that in front of partners, or sorry, customers, for partners to bring it to life with customers. Anyways, so that's the gist for AEM. Sarah, did you want to start or share your screen with the demos and jump into that?
Yeah, absolutely. And just, I guess, one last note, I think, on the use cases before we fully dive into any of these use cases. Sorry, dive into the demo.
To show me, yes.
We're all switching up words today. Please do, reach out to us if you have any questions. And we've done actually a lot of the sessions about the different functionalities, like the one that Surya is talking about with Commerce UI extensibility. There's one with AEM UI extensibility.
Right.
Hopefully it helps you, ideate on what kind of application you could build. But of course, feel free to reach out to your partner team and to us. If you need some help, bouncing back some ideas, we're definitely here to we're definitely here to help.
Yeah, and I'll pop this up. Anyways, yeah, as Sarah mentioned early on, if you have any questions, definitely add them to the chat. I've been adding a couple of links Yeah, so anything comes up, by all means. And like Sarah said, there's a bunch of content already, and we are happy to help you guys. Okay, let's jump into the demo, and I will, Surya and I will drop off, and we'll be hanging out in the background, and we'll hand it over to you.
Perfect. I was contemplating doing a live demo, but then I actually wanted to stop at certain places, as well as I've realized some of the steps might take a little longer than I had hoped for. So we're actually going to do a recording, so that will help me easier to talk through all the different experiences that it goes through. Actually, I'm seeing a question in the chat right now about a YouTube link tutorial for creating and submitting your application. So we're actually going to be covering how you submit this application today. For creating, Ron, perhaps you could help me paste in a link with how you can get started. I know that we do have videos for this as well. But for today's demo, we're going to start talking about once you have an application that is done. All right. For those of you maybe seeing this for the first time, this is the Adobe IO CLI. Essentially, what's happened here is we've already created an application using the AIO app init command, and selecting from one of the existing templates. They have built an application and made changes to it, customized it, deployed it, made sure that everything is working in their local machine. And the folder looks a little bit like this. So you can see, there's the app package, there's no modules, there's additional code, there's package.json. The file that we wanted to bring your attention to here is the file we wanted to bring your attention to here is the package.json and the appconfig.yaml file, because these are actually the two documents that we use in packaging your application to make sure the information is correctly extracted. And this could be, what kind of product is your application integrating with? What are the configuration you would like to make available? There's documentation that'll explain this a little bit more in depth, but long story short, these are the two files where we extract all that configuration and product information during the packaging process to help us understand what does your application do on a high level. So once you have the application, what you can then do is do AIO app package. This command allows us to take this configuration file, take the appconfig.yaml file, take the package.json file, zip all of your code into one zip file with all this information that we have. And you can see after you've run the command, a zip file gets generated. So with that, we can then come to our next spot, which is the Adobe Developer Distribution Portal. So for those of you who may be seeing this portal for the very first time, we oftentimes link this from Developer Console, so it might be a little invisible to you that this is the portal that you're arriving at. But Adobe Developer Distribution is actually where developers will be managing all of your listings that you want to make available onto the marketplace. You can access it directly at the URL developer.adobe.com/distribute home, or it's also, for when you're accessing your projects within console, you can actually see the button to distribute, and this is where it will take you. So once I have that as a developer, once I have that application that has been packaged up, what I'll do here is I'll then go to create a new listing within this portal. You will actually see this is a shared portal across the different clouds of Adobe. So when you are creating a listing itself, you're going to be able to see different types of listing, historic listings that has been for your organization. When you begin to create a listing, you can see all the different types of applications that you can create. A lot of these are for Creative Cloud applications, but more options are being added. But if you are building an Apple application, the one you choose is Apple application. And this will essentially prompt up, create a brand new listing within this organization and allow you to start filling in all the details here. Before we dive deep into, filling out some of these details, I want to make sure we kind of talk through the concept of each listing a little bit. So there are two sections to a listing. The first one is the screen that you're seeing here, which is the listing details. This is basically whatever you want to be shown on the Exchange screen for your application. What is the name? What is the email? What is the documentation? What are the screenshots? This is where you fill in all this information. And then we have a separate thing that's called a version. So think of a version as code, basically. So for each listing, there is only one copy of the listing details, but there could be as many versions as you need. So there could be a 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. As your application evolves, you can continue to create new versions, make changes to them, as well as deprecate older versions. So there's the general information that's listing details, and there's individual versions that you'll be able to manage independently as part of a listing. And these two components together is what an app builder listing will be. So in the interest of time, we're not gonna, fill out all the details, and let's use an existing application that we have created to basically show you how you can then, once you fill out the listing details, how you can then actually add your code to it as well. So within this demo application, we already have filled out the demo for the listing details portion with some dummy code. And let's go to see how we can create a new version. So as you can see, you first click the button to add a new version that will bring you to this particular screen. You would take the zip file that was generated in that last step, and then you would drag and drop it basically and put it right here. And as the application is, loading, this is where we run a lot of the automated tests that we talked about. It will be, and we'll see some, information being extracted from this package in a minute. But apart from the package itself, there's additional option that you can select. These are all per version. So for each version, you could have different, metadata associated with it. Particularly, there's this field called optional Adobe products. This is as I have an application, I have multiple, I know in my code that these are the products that I absolutely need for this thing to work. Those are the information that we extract from the package.json. Let's say your application uses the analytics API, then that would be what we consider a required product and extract from the package. But let's say if you do have analytics API, but you can also use this application with campaign, for instance, but it's not a requirement for this application to run. This is where you can make that selection and choose all the optional Adobe products for your listing. In addition, you can choose whether or not you want to make your source code available. So we've seen cases where the developer says, hey, I don't want my code to be available. I want the customer to just be able to install this. It's all invisible to the customer. You can make that decision yourself right here in the package download section. Because we've also seen other developers that says, my code is a little bit more complex. I want to allow the option for my customer to customize this and download the code and basically manipulate the code and do it themselves when needed. We leave that option open to both the developer and the customer to do this. So you'll be able to make that choice yourself. All right, as you can see, the information begins to get populated as there's the application version, the application version is extracted from your package.json. You define, whatever package version you have. There's the required application. So these are the APIs, events, whatever you have used within your application that is needed. And we have this last field called custom configurations. These are basically, you say, I'm going to take in this value as a param within my application. The customer will be able to define these value, and as they're installing the application, and me as a developer, I'm just going to allow them to configure these aspects of my application. So the example application that we had here, and for instance, if you have something that's going from assets, AEM assets, where whenever a new asset gets uploaded, I want to send it through a Slack webhook to just notify a channel. Then the custom configuration you might want to include would be, what's the Slack webhook? What is the AEM instance? And what is the file name? So those are the types of value that you as a developer can define as custom configurations. In addition, while I'm talking, you can see this field called validation results. That is actually, oops, my apologies for jumping a little bit. You can see this field called the validation results that's actually pending. These are all the automated tests that is running behind the scenes. And yes, we'll have documentation to explain what particularly these package checks for, so that you can actually get a better sense of what the results indicate. With that, I'm going to jump through. This is talking through, we have a lot of different fields, the general information. The media includes all the, different screenshots, logo, caption for your screenshot. You can fill in a lot of the particular information related to your listings here. Categories, this is really about discoverability. So this is the field where you can select whether or not you want to make your application available both on Adobe Exchange and Adobe Commerce Marketplace, or only on Adobe. So Exchange is selected by default, and you can have the option to also double list this on Commerce Marketplace. And of course, you can add any categories and tags that help increase your visibility for your project or searchability. These are all filters. And last but not least, you can also define the payment method for your application. So the listing details, we filled it out. It's done now. Let's go back to the draft and look at our validation results. While the test is still running, let's make selections for the rest of these fields and put in, my release note for what this version is actually about. I'm going to fast forward just a touch too far. There we go. So once your validation have all passed, you will now have the option to submit. So we won't allow you to submit it until all of these validation results have returned and returned green. With that, you can see that the version is now visible, and you can now hit preview and submit your application. You can put in any note you want. This listing goes to an Adobe person who's going to look through this listing. You can put in any notes. You can decide if you want the publishing to happen immediately, or you just want the Adobe reviewer to approve this, but you want to line it up for a certain date. So that it's not visible to customers later. Those are all options available here. And this essentially mostly concludes your experience as a developer. Once you submit this listing, it goes off to Adobe. We have a very experienced review team that is looking at this application, and we'll get back to you. Any feedback will go through this portal. You'll be able to hear if the listing is approved, if the listing wasn't approved, what are the reasoning behind it. We'll communicate closely with you to make sure the listing goes through. In addition, while you have submitted your listing, you can also see what it's going to look like in the marketplace through this option called View in Marketplace. And this basically gives you a quick preview of how your final application is going to look like, how are the screenshots going to be presented. It's a very helpful tool as you're actually laying out all the information for your application. And you can see that the application is in review stage until the Adobe approver has reviewed it. This next section, I'm going to speed through it a little bit because we're peeling back the curtain a little bit on what actually happens within Adobe. Long story short, we have a review portal where we are able to see all of the app builder applications that has been listed. Our reviewer can actually, see all the information associated with it. Then run additional tests, both manual and technical, to make sure it's to par before we approve it and send it to the marketplace. Jumping along a little up ahead, as the, me as the approver, let's say I have approved this application, then you as the developer will be able to see that your application is now published on developer distribution and available. And I can actually, see this application live in Exchange as soon as it's approved, and it will become available for purchasing from my customers. All the information you've submitted will be accessible in this portal, whether it's documentation, description, support information, anything will be available. And then we're switching gears. So this is basically where the developer's journey ends. You have submitted the application, you have, you've created the application, I guess is really the step one. You have built the application, you have submitted the application, you then make it available to the customer through Adobe Exchange and Commerce Marketplace. Now we're switching gear to the customer's lens on how customers actually going to buy and purchase this application. Before I dive into that, let me see if there's any questions in the chat that we can. My apologies. Yes, usually I'll be able to increase the demo screen, the fonts on the demo screen, but I'm actually doing it through a recording, as you guys can see, because I want to jump over certain steps. But all of this we have documentation that goes along with it, so you'll be able to see it more clearly. I just want to be able to illustrate the overall flow today. In addition, there's another question about, is there analytics or statistics tool to overview sales and downloads? Yes, so that is something that we're actually working on. I think that in the first phase, you'll have some high-level information on how your application is doing. We're really working hard to introduce additional information in that Insights tab. So TLDR, we have limited functionality at the beginning, but more to come soon. All right, with that, let's look at the customer's experience as they are purchasing the application. So me as a customer, I'll come to Exchange, I see all the application that's listed here, I see this application and I go, ooh, this looks good, I want to buy it. And this is a free application so that I don't have to put in a credit card information in front of you guys, where the customer basically clicks it and say, I want to buy this. And then it will inform the customer what kind of products is needed for this to run to make sure they don't accidentally click purchase. As long as they say, yes, I do have these products, it looks good to me, they can click yes to continue with the purchase. And because it's a free application, so we're jumping through all the payment stuff, but of course, in other cases, payment information will be entered. Once the application has been acquired, because we're really talking about enterprise customer here, so there needs to be an administrative control in place. Any customer within any user or any employee within a customer's company would be able to purchase an application. But to make sure the application can be used across company, we want to make sure the organization system admin has approved it. So as soon as this application gets purchased, we basically send an email to the system administrators that says, hey, please, please help us look through this application. Someone is requesting to buy this. Please approve it. And now, switching to a unique persona within the customer's organization, which is system administrator here. As a system administrator, I get that email. I would then be prompted to come to Adobe Exchange where I can actually see this application. And you will not be able to install this before the system admin has approved this. And the system admin can, have access to all the information. What is this listing? What is the documentation? What does it do? And let's say they go ahead and approve this application. Once the application is approved, they can then, go into this particular application and install environments for it. We'll explain a little bit later. But because, sensitive data and content could be accessed by these applications, we also want system admin to have the ability to revoke application at any time. So they'll have the option when something is installed, they can always revoke the application. And when something is revoked, they'll have to be, acquired again. But, they can be rejected by your system administrator as well. All right. With that, let me switch gear to show you. Oops. I think my screen is a little bit frozen. Ron, would you be able to pull up maybe the second video here? I think my mouse is dying.
It's actually, I can't from this machine, unfortunately. So yeah, if you have any, I can.
Oh, I have been unfroze.
Get back.
I have been unfroze.
There you go.
There we go. Oof, technical difficulties.
Okay. Hey, and while you're doing that, I just wanted to ask, I know Surya is not on, but if you could put those links that you put in, if you could put those into the private chat, I will add them to the YouTube stream because we're actually streaming to 2 different places. So that'd be awesome. Okay. There we go. Go ahead, Sarah.
Which link are we talking about? Oh, the documentations?
Yeah, that Surya had put in. If you've got links as well, you could throw those into private chat and I'll add them to the stream. But go ahead. We got about 7 minutes left. So
oof, I really got to speak through this session. Okay, so now assuming that I'm a customer, I bought it, my system administrator has approved it, it's now up to me to install this application. So once the application has been approved, they actually see this new section appear on the bottom that says Add Environments. So we have this concept called environments because we know customers might have, God, I don't know, how many stage, how many dev, how many prod. I know there's infinite variations of how each company and each organization is setting up their environments. So we want to give you full flexibility in how you want to test the application in different environments. So you can create environments right here once the application has been approved. Once the application has been approved, there we go. You can click the button to say add a new environment, put in a name for it, save it. This behind the scenes will spin up a project and create a new environment for us to deploy this application into. And once an application has been created, you can then select to open it and actually view the details of it and deploy the application to this environment. When you hit deploy, we open this configuration screen that is currently loading. This configuration screen is extracted, basically all the information that we need to deploy this application lives in this configuration section. So we're using a slightly different application here. So remember when we're doing submission, there is a configuration field that says ADM, Slack, Slack webhook, and whether or not to include file name. This is the equivalence of that, but in the interest of time, we're making a short version that's just switching different background colors. So that's the configuration we want the customer to select. So the customer can actually, and this is defined by the developer, right? So when you're building the application, you can create as many fields as you need, and those gets reflected here. You could make this a text box or links or toggle, but the option that we're showing here is a drop-down menu. So let's say they select the drop-down menu. They say we're going to go for, actually, I'm trying to remember which one we went for at the end. I think it was the celery color. You hit deploy. It's going to say, okay, we not only need that configuration value, we also need some product profile information. So for those of you that have worked with Developer Console before, you know that we have product profiles for different integrations, events. This is to make sure when you're making this application, it has access to the right content and data. And that's all we're doing here. So when you're deploying this application, let's make sure it also has the right access to the right products here. So we're going to make all the selections. And we're going to make all the selections here. Once all the selections are made, you can then hit the button to deploy. Once you start deploying the application, it takes a few minutes behind the scenes as it's spinning up, and it just says in progress. All right, so deployment has succeeded within, you can now go to what the environment details tab on the left, and you can actually see the application now. So click on the link, that's the deployed URL. You can actually see this URL deployed with the celery background color that we have chosen, live and available to your customers right here. So that's basically how environments work and how application deployment works. You can use all of this. In addition, logs and insights for how this application is executing is also available to the customer. So they can actually come to this Insights tab within their environment and look at, hey, we just made a deployment. They can see the deployment logs here, and they'll be able to see any execution log that's also available to them. This really helps customer self-diagnose if something is going wrong, as well as if support is needed, they can then take this log and send it to the developer and say, this is where things went wrong. I know we're at time here.
I popped in, we got a minute, so I just wanted to.
Okay, so long story short, you can create different environments, you can delete the environments. We look through our documentation. Feel free to ping us if you have any questions. But it's fully self-service to the customer, and easy for them to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Surya. I'm gonna throw Surya up here as well. Thank you, Sarah and Surya, both of you guys, for joining me today and talking about that. Super cool. That's actually the first time I think that I've seen the whole process end to end. Yeah. So yeah, it's amazing to see how far you guys have come along in a short amount of time. Excellent. As Sarah mentioned, anyone out there who has any questions, and Sarah, if you've got any other documentation, I put on a couple of links into the chat. If there's any other ones that I might have missed, if you want to throw those in there as well, that would be awesome. But yeah, and if anybody has any questions, we have like 27 seconds left. So by all means, there is something up there. Oh, hey, there you go, Sarah, put that in there. Great. Yeah, well, there you go. It is top of the hour, so have a fantastic day. And if you're watching this on the recording, I hope this was useful for you. Let us know if you have any questions. We're always here for you. Okay, have a great day.
Thank you all so much. Bye, guys.
Everyone.